The market women of West Africa and their daily trade. Imagine the first light of dawn breaking over a West African town. The air is cool, filled with the soft sounds of roosters crowing and the distant beat of drums used to signal the start of the day. As the sun lifts above the horizon, the streets begin to stir. Women emerge from their homes carrying baskets on their heads, walking with practiced grace. Some baskets hold yams, others tomatoes, cassava, or bundles of dried fish. The women walk together, chatting quietly, their footsteps quickening as they head toward the heart of the town, the marketplace. The market is not just a place of trade. It is the center of daily life, a living heartbeat that ties the community together. Here, stories are exchanged along with goods. News travels faster across stalls than through any official messenger. The laughter of children mixes with the bargaining voices of women, the clinking of cowries or coins, and the smell of spices drifting through the air. The role of women. In much of West Africa, markets were, and still are, run by women. While men might fish, farm, or herd cattle, it was the women who carried produce to market, set the prices, and conducted the trade. In many towns, women held official positions as market leaders, ayalojas among the Yoruba, or market queens in other regions, responsible not only for organizing stalls but also for resolving disputes, enforcing fairness, and sometimes even advising local rulers. These gave women a unique power. While political authority might rest with chiefs or kings, the economic lifeblood flowed through women's hands. Their decisions about price and supply could ripple outward, affecting whole communities. The setting of the market. Picture the scene as you arrive at the market square. It is a wide, open space, sometimes shaded by tall trees, sometimes bounded by clay walls. Mats are spread on the ground, and stalls made of wood and thatch line the perimeter. Goats are rare. The market at midday is a dazzling swirl of voices and colors. Buyers and sellers lean across baskets, haggling with smiles or mock outrage. Children dart between legs, balancing trays of fruit or peanuts. Amid the sound and movement, there is an order not immediately visible to the outsider. Markets did not run on chance. They were carefully organized, regulated, and led, often by women whose authority extended far beyond the piles of yams and peppers at their stalls. The market leaders. Among the Yoruba of present-day Nigeria, for example, the leader of the market was known as the Ayaloja, literally, the mother of the market. She was not simply a symbolic figure but an active administrator. The Yaloja set prices to prevent unfair competition, assigned stalls to traders, and settled disputes when tempers flared. She acted as both judge and caretaker, balancing fairness with compassion. Other societies had similar figures, market queens, had women, or respected elders chosen by consensus. Their power came not from wealth alone, but from reputation, years of fair dealing, generosity, and the ability to mediate quarrels with calm authority. In some towns, these women also had ceremonial roles, leading processions or offering prayers for the prosperity of the market. The flow of order. To keep a market functioning smoothly required careful orchestration. Stalls had to be arranged so that sellers of similar goods were grouped together, fishmongers in one corner, spice traders in another, fabric sellers along one row. These not only made the market easier to navigate but also prevented chaos when buyers sought particular items. The leaders also regulated weights and measures. A woman selling groundnuts might use a standard gourd scoop, while a cloth seller measured lengths against a wooden rod. Dishonest dealing could quickly ruin trust, so officials checked these tools and punished cheats. The punishment might be public shaming, confiscation of goods, or exclusion from. The market, alive with noise and color, was more than a place of exchange. It was a theater of authority, a hub of power, and a mirror of community life. We have seen how women not only sold goods but also organized, guided, advised, and even prayed for prosperity. But history did not stand still. With the arrival of new powers, new economies, and new pressures, these markets, and the women who led them, faced challenges that tested their endurance. The colonial interruption. When European colonial powers established control across West Africa in the 19th and early 20th centuries, markets became contested ground. Colonial officials often failed to recognize the authority of market women, preferring to impose male chiefs or bureaucrats as intermediaries. Yet they soon discovered that policies could not succeed without women's cooperation. Taxes on goods, attempts to regulate trade routes, and restrictions on presses often clashed with established practices. Market women, who knew the rhythm of supply and demand better than distant officials, resisted in subtle and overt ways. They hid goods, created parallel markets, or simply ignored orders that did not align with local realities. In Nigeria, Ghana, and beyond, some of the earliest organized protests against colonial rule were led by market women. They understood that controlling the market meant controlling the people, and they refused to surrender that ground without a struggle. Everyday resistance. Resistance did not always take the form of open protest. More often, it was woven into daily acts. A woman might sell at unofficial prices, arguing that the colonial fixed rate was unfair. She might smuggle goods to neighboring towns, bypassing checkpoints. She might delay tax payments until officials grew weary. These acts, small in themselves, accumulated into a quiet defiance that preserved a measure of independence. For the average woman balancing a basket of yams on her head, survival meant adaptari. The first thing you notice is the sound, or rather, the absence of it. In Antarctica, once the howling wind drops, silence spreads across the ice like a vast, heavy blanket. For the early explorers who came here at the turn of the 20th century, this silence was not a novelty, it was a presence, something that pressed against their minds and bodies through months of frozen darkness. When European nations launched expeditions to the Antarctic, they knew little of the conditions awaiting them. Ships creaked into the southern seas, their sails stiff with frost, carrying men eager for glory, science, or national prestige. But once the ice closed around their vessels, or once their huts were built on some desolate stretch of coast, a different reality set in, the winter. The polar night. In the Antarctic, winter is not just cold. It is dark. The sun disappears entirely for weeks, then months, leaving only a dim twilight at noon. Early explorers, used to the rhythms of day and night, found themselves disoriented. At first, men joked about sleeping whenever they wished, free from the tyranny of the clock. But as weeks passed, the endless night gnawed at them. Sleep grew irregular, tempers frayed, and time itself seemed to lose meaning. Though past the long hours, routines became vital. Each expedition created a schedule, dividing work, meals, and recreation into strict blocks. Without routine, the silence and darkness threatened to swallow the men whole. The huts and their smells. Imagine stepping inside one of the wooden huts built by explorers like Robert Falcon Scott or Ernest Shackleton. The walls are thick but drafty, the roof rimmed with frost. The air is heavy with the smell of seal meat, blubber lamps, damp wool, and unwashed bodies. Banks line the walls, each crammed with bedding stiff from condensation. In the corner, a stove sputters, fueled by precious coal or blubber. Men crowd around the stove, reading, writing, or mending clothing. Outside, the wind screams. The silence of the Antarctic winter was not simply an absence of sound. It was a presence, something that weighed on men's minds as surely as the cold pressed on their bodies. To survive such months, explorers needed more than food and shelter, they needed strategies of the spirit. The weight of isolation. Picture the calendar, June, July, August. In London, Paris, or New York, these months would bring warm evenings, crowded parks, and the smell of gardens. In the Antarctic, they brought the opposite, black skies, frozen seas, and a sense of being cut off from the world. Letters could not be sent. News could not arrive. A man might wonder whether his family thought of him that day, or whether nations had gone to war without his knowing. Isolation bred strange feelings. Some explorers described the dreamlike detachment, as if the world beyond the ice were a story from long ago. Others found their memories sharpening, the face of a loved one, the sound of a church bell, the taste of apples. These memories became companions, but also tormentors, reminding the men of what they lacked. The role of leaders. In such conditions, leadership mattered enormously. Ernest Shackleton, remembered as one of the great Antarctic commanders, understood this better than most. He insisted on regular meals, scheduled duties, and shared recreation. He knew that letting men drift into idleness meant letting despair take hold. Shackleton also practiced what might be called tactical cheerfulness. When spirits were low, he cracked jokes. When disputes flared, he intervened swiftly. He joined games, sang songs, and praised even small accomplishments. To outsiders, such efforts might seem trivial, but to the men in the ice, they were lifelines. Other leaders tried similar approaches. Robert Falcon Scott, more formal and scientific, emphasized discipline and documentation. His men kept detailed weather records, drew sketches, and classified specimens. Their work gave purpose to days that otherwise. The Antarctic winter does not end all at once. It retreats in hesitant steps, as if the sun itself is reluctant to return. After months of black skies, the men notice a faint band of light on the horizon. At first, it is no more than a rumor, a thin line of orange that quickly fades. Yet it is enough to stir excitement. For weeks, the explorers measure each lengthening twilight, whispering about how close they are to daybreak. When, at last, the sun climbs above the horizon, it seems impossibly large and radiant. Men stumble outside, shielding their eyes, and stare at it as though at a miracle. Diaries describe the return of light as one of the most joyous moments of the expeditions. Some men wept openly. Others laughed like children. After months of silence and darkness, the world felt alive again. The first journeys out. With light returning, expeditions could finally prepare for movement. Sledges were repaired, dogs were exercised, and maps unfolded. The long wait of winter had been endured for this moment, the chance to venture further into the frozen continent. But the first journeys were tentative. Bodies, weakened by months indoors, had to readjust. Men found themselves clumsy, stumbling across ice ridges. The dogs, restless, sometimes ran wildly until raining, yet spirits were high. To breathe air under the sun, even if that air was sharp and freezing, was to feel human again. The marks of winter. Still, the winter had left its mark. Faces were thinner, beards scraggly. Some men bore the scars of frostbite, others, the lasting weariness of poor nutrition. Yet the psychological toll was more subtle. For many, the silence of the dark months lingered in memory long after the ice was left behind. Some spoke of nightmares, in which they returned again and again to the endless night. Yet others carried a different lesson. They had discovered resilience in themselves that they had not known before. To survive months of darkness, with only a small group of men.